Welcome to How Tenders Are Assessed, presented to you by the PHN. There are two main things to consider about tender assessments. Who is assessing the tender and what is the assessment process? First, let's look at who is assessing the tender. The answer to this question depends on the organisation. Usually a procurement manager is involved and internal staff. Experts may also participate in the assessment. The tender documents may specify this or not. When thinking about who assesses tenders, it's important to remember that different people will likely review different questions. For example, financial questions may be reviewed by a finance team, or a First Nations advisor may review your response to the First Nations engagement question. Understanding your information is being reviewed by different people with different lived experience and speciality helps you consider the language, terms and information you're providing in your response. Next, let's take a look at the assessment process. There are generally 3 stages in the process. The first stage of assessment is due diligence. During this stage, alignment to compliance and minimum requirements is reviewed. The assessor will review your response to make sure you're eligible and if you included everything that was requested, such as how you plan on meeting the requirements, scope, and conditions of tender. The next stage is the application assessment, which includes a more detailed assessment of your answers and scoring for each answer. Using a scoring table, assessors will mark your answer to each question. Your total marks will then rank you among all the other applications. Usually the top 10 to 20% advance to the next stage of the process. The third stage is evaluation criteria assessment. This is ranking your application against the evaluation criteria. Here, you're also compared against other tender responses. Tenders generally list the evaluation criteria, but it may not be in a priority order. Examples of evaluation criteria include service delivery model, cultural safety for First Nations people, risk and governance, and response pricing. Some tenders provide weightings against this criteria. This demonstrates when some criteria are more important than others. For example, service delivery model, 35%. Cultural safety for First Nations people, 25%. Risk and governance, 20%. And response pricing, 20%. Now that you have a better idea how tenders are assessed, you can start to prepare your answers. In the next video, we will look at evidence and data you may need to support your response.